It's the appointed time to begin our Ensuring Sustainability Advisory Committee, and I will call this meeting this afternoon to order. Our number 2 item is that we always pause to take a moment to reflect, just a little quiet time before we consider the business at hand. So if you just take a moment, please, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof today on our agenda from anyone? Seeing none. Something that is always read at meetings is about public participation. Members of the public are encouraged to provide the committee with their comments and questions. Presentations must be prearranged with legislative services before the agenda is released. Members of the public who wish to make a deputation about a specific agenda item at the meeting must register in advance with legislative services by 4 p.m. on October the 1st, 2024 by contacting Deputy Clerk at meaford.ca or 509-538-1060 extension 1110. Presentations are limited to 10 minutes. Deputations are limited to 5. Today, we have a presentation, and I understand that they will be joining. We can listen to the presenter. Not on yet. But we're having a presentation today by Michelle Blake, Programs and Policy Manager of Mind Your Plastic, the Circular Economy. And whenever she gets on, we will listen in. I know that we, the members here, have looked over what was sent, and it is today's basic subject matter for discussion. So she's not. She's on now? Yeah, we're gonna turn her on. Excellent.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
You're with us this afternoon?
I am. I actually have a coworker who is listed as well. Would she be able to be unmuted? It should be Emily. She should be in the room.
Okay. Well, welcome. And
thank you.
We look forward to the presentation here this afternoon. I just mentioned that it is the actual core of our discussion for today's meeting.
Perfect. Okay. Does Emily have the capacity to be unmuted or no?
She's unmuted now.
She's unmuted?
Michelle is with us?
I am.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
And
okay.
Whenever you're ready, you begin, and we're going to be listening here intently.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'll just let you know when to change the slides, and
yes,
everybody
please.
can follow along.
Yes, please.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, then. Yeah, so welcome and thank you everyone for your attention today. You can go ahead and go to that second slide for me. So a little bit about the issue of plastic pollution. Less than 9% of the plastic produced around the world actually gets recycled. So by 2050, as a result, it's estimated that there's going to be more plastic in our oceans than fish. And every minute, one dump truck, it's actually closer to 2 dump trucks now of plastic enters our oceans. So obviously those are really concerning numbers when we think about how much our environment's being impacted. From a climate change perspective, the production and burning of plastic can contribute up to 850 million tons of greenhouse gases every year. So really, when you're tackling plastic pollution, you're also tackling climate change. And then from a wildlife perspective, I'm sure we've all seen, pictures and heard stories of wildlife ingesting and getting entangled in plastics. So that's obviously also a concern. And then plastics are increasingly being found in our own bodies, in our blood, our lungs, breast milk, and even more recently, studies are being expanded about how plastics are impacting the human heart, which is also worrying. Next slide, please. So, and a little bit about Mind Your Plastic. We are a registered Canadian charity, and our mission is to eliminate plastic pollution here in Canada. So we do this in a variety of different ways. We work with Canadian businesses to help them take impactful steps towards eliminating their plastic pollution footprint. We work with municipalities and governments to implement progressive change and reduce their own waste. We do a little bit of work with plastic producers, recyclers, and then provide some really great education pieces for consumers as well. And then all of the work that we do is underpinned by the promotion of a circular economy. Next slide, please. So our programs, we have three pillar programs. The first is a plastic-free events policy program where we advocate with municipal governments to help them make policy change that reduces the amount of plastic and single-use item waste that's generated by our local events. And then we also have a plastic awareness and reduction toolkit program where we work with businesses to help them create toolkits that will apply to their specific workplaces and figure out how they can take those first steps to eliminating single-use waste across their operations. And right now we have 4 sectors available. We've got retail, food service, office and administration, and then manufacturing as well. And then our final program there is a Circular Economy Ambassador program, where we're helping teachers educate students across Canada about the impacts of plastic pollution and the benefits of a circular economy. So that's a really great program. I'll talk a little bit more about it at the very end, but that is completely free for educators across Canada, which is really great. Next slide, please. When we look at the problem with single use, a good place to start is, what does single use mean? So single use refers to all of the items and packaging that we use on a daily basis that are designed and manufactured to be used only once or maybe for a very short period of time and then immediately discarded. So single use is so popular because we're all consumers in what we call a linear economy, which means we actually make almost all of the products that we purchase they're created with the intention of becoming waste. So this is what we call a take, make, waste system. But often this system and this linear economy, it sounds like it's going to be cheaper, maybe upstream in the manufacturing, it's cheaper to just kind of apply single-use plastic. But often this system doesn't account for all of the costs that are associated with the waste generated, with collection, with all the environmental and external factors that require cleanup at the end of life. So you can see the diagram there at the bottom, where we're taking the resources from the environment to make the products that we use. Then us as a consumer are buying them, and then we're directly putting them into the garbage and consequently into the landfill. Next slide, please. In contrast to a linear economy, we have the circular economy. And the circular economy is an economic system that's based on using renewable resources. It's based on eliminating the excessive amounts of waste, and then reusing and recycling all of our material goods. So a circular economy includes the reduction of materials that we're using, the reduction of resources that we will have to extract. It uses waste as a resource to produce our new materials and our new products. And then in the end, it decreases and ideally eliminates the creation of waste completely. We're a little far off of that dream, but that is the ultimate goal. And you'll see on the right here a diagram of the circular economy where we're taking the raw materials to manufacture into the products that we use. Us as consumers are consuming and using those products, but then it's going back around the circle to be recycled, or even better yet, reused with very little residual waste. So that's the ideal system, and that's kind of aspirational where we want to go. Next slide, please. So within the circular economy, we really look towards the waste hierarchy to be able to direct where we want to prioritize our materials. So we use this hierarchy as a guide to rank our waste management options. And then through this ranking, we want to minimize our waste and maximize the use of the materials that we already have. So on the right here, we've got a really great example that highlights the 5 R's. So from top to bottom there, you've got rethink, where we're thinking about if a purchase is necessary, and if it isn't, well, then we're just avoiding it. Reduce is the second one there. So thinking about how we can consume or purchase products that might minimize, eliminate, or avoid waste altogether. And then, of course, reuse, maximizing how we reuse the materials and products that we have by allowing them to be maintained or repaired. And then ultimately, they get to retain their value and useful and function for us as consumers. Recycling, which I'm sure everybody knows about, is supporting the diversion and use of materials for its highest purpose after it becomes waste. So for example, when we recycle a plastic bottle, we really want to see that bottle get recycled into a new bottle and have it be used for the same purpose. And then at the bottom there, we've got recover and disposal, which we want to minimize in comparison to some of the other other options higher up on this hierarchy. So really this gives a great overview and context of where we want to focus our attention when it comes to how we can avoid waste and then where our waste goes. Next slide, please. So here are some alternatives to single-use plastic that we might think about. The best alternative would ultimately be reusables. So a reusable would be any material or item that can withstand a lot of uses or washes. We often see reuse take form in kind of deposit refund systems or borrowing systems, kind of like food service in a cafeteria. Or I know that the reuse service provider Friendlier, which some of you may have heard from, actually has businesses signed up for reuse in Thornbury and Collingwood. So it's fairly close by to you folks. But we can also have reuse be more informal with bringing our own containers. And a lot of the time that can be the easiest way to introduce reuse into our own lives. And maybe where some of these systems don't already exist, say in your favorite restaurant or grocery store, you can make reuse available to yourself by bringing along some of those items and knowing that you have them. So bringing your own reusable coffee cup or your own containers to get takeout or leftovers, you can be sure that you can reduce your own waste wherever you go. In the middle there is a good alternative to single-use plastic, a highly recyclable or compostable paper. So paper foodware and napkins are going to be better than plastic because they can still be composted if they have food residue on them. So instead of potentially contaminating your recycling stream, you can put those in the green bin wherever it's appropriate. A good thing to keep in mind if you're looking at paper alternatives is to ensure that they're not lined with a polyethylene or a plastic coating that might make them non-recyclable or non-compostable. And you can often kind of spot a coating on a paper because it might be shinier than normal or it might be more waterproof than normal. And those are really great clues that something is coated there. Then alternatives to avoid. We want to avoid anything non-recyclable or difficult to recycle or that's ultimately going to end up in landfill. So things like condiment sachets, food pouches, films that really have no end-of-life pathway. Resource-intensive materials should also not be used as single-use products or packaging. So things like glass or stainless steel that you could use instead as a reusable material. And then compostable plastics or bioplastics that can't be composted locally should also be avoided. Next slide, please. So in terms of, a municipality's role in plastic pollution reduction, of course, there's always a role for advocacy and collaboration, being able to bring together local partners and residents, businesses, and really advocating for change at the municipal level, as well as higher levels of government. Leadership is also a really important quality, taking bold action and leading the way to reduce plastic pollution in your community. Municipalities have really been leaders in this space, and I foresee them continuing to do so there. And then, of course, policy. So adopting policy that ensures businesses and residents and the municipality itself is partaking in important measures. Next slide, please. And then here are some initiatives that have been adopted by municipalities. Bans, of course, procurement strategies, investing in public plastic-free infrastructure like refill stations or public water fountains, green teams and sorting stations, policies, as I mentioned, to reduce internally what the municipality produces in terms of single-use waste across their operations. And then, of course, plastic-free event policies as well. So figuring out how we can reduce plastics at our events. Next slide, please. And how you can get involved from a Mind Your Plastic perspective, our Circular Economy Ambassador program, as I mentioned, our school program is open for registration right now. So if you know any educators you think would be interested in a free program to help their students learn about plastic pollution, you can definitely send them our way or direct them to our website where they can find out more information. From a business perspective, if you also know a business who's looking to take the first steps to reduce plastic, definitely we're happy to help. I'm happy to find that place to start and get moving on reduction. From a policy perspective, obviously supporting new and developing policies in your area and initiatives to address single-use plastic pollution would be fantastic. And then finally, direct action there, of course, supporting environmental organizations and supporting the advocacy that's happening, teaching your community, your own network about plastic pollution, repeating some of the things you've heard today is a great place to start, or organizing a cleanup and even planning a fundraiser can all contribute to doing your part in helping plastic pollution. So that's the end of my presentation. I think there's just a thank you slide at the very end there. Thank you so much, everyone. Happy to take questions, or my email is there as well if anybody has any questions following the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle, for joining us here this afternoon. Your presentation is at the heart of what we are going to be talking about on our agenda. And in no small part, I want to thank my co-chair and my fellow counselor, Brandon Porter. He tells me and others that he's been in contact with yourself, and
Absolutely.
that you're really our guest presenter this afternoon because of Mr. Porter, bringing your organization and your work forward for our consideration today. So at this point, I think I would just like to ask around the horseshoe if there's questions, and I'll start with you, my co-chair, Brandon Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. Hi, Michelle and Emily. Thank you guys very much for your presentation. I appreciate that very much. I was just hoping maybe the two of you might be able to comment on some of the work you've done with some other municipalities, what that sort of looked like, and maybe what were some of the challenges with regards to some of the work that you've been doing. So I might have some other questions, but I'll let you guys start there. Thank you.
Absolutely, no problem. Yeah, so we've worked with municipalities in a variety of different ways. The town of Ajax, we kind of joined in to help them after they had already adopted their corporate ban on single-use plastics. So our work with them primarily included, developing toolkits and engaging the public and helping them understand, why it was important to reduce single-use plastics, what they could do in their own lives, how they could incorporate those sort of habits into the events that they're planning. So really those great education pieces and helping people understand the why behind the policy implementation. We've also helped municipalities develop the policy itself. So we're in collaboration with the city of Nanaimo in BC right now, helping them develop a green events policy. So understanding, what that looks like. As you mentioned, the challenges that might arise in implementing and carrying out some of the policy initiatives, like reducing single-use plastics at events. And I would say primarily the biggest challenges are typically in a reduction sort of space, just getting people to change their habits, getting people on board. And businesses can be a bit of a hurdle as well if there are any sort of barriers that they see to participating in plastic reduction or in systems like reuse. But a really great place to start, we found, for municipalities has been kind of that corporate angle, like Ajax has done, and other municipalities have done similar things, where you're reflecting on sort of your own processes and where you can eliminate single-use plastics within the municipalities kind of jurisdiction there within your facilities and the events that you hold and that you plan. It can be a really great place to show an example for your residents and to show them what's possible and to show them that you're willing to take those first steps and and become that sort of leader in the plastic pollution space, pollution reduction space, I should say. Did I get all the pieces of your question?
Yes, thank you very much. That's great. I think I'll just turn it over if some of the other committee members have any questions. We'll just see what they have to say, if anything. Thank you.
Thank you for that. To the other two members here this afternoon, you have some questions for Michelle? We have member Leslie Lewis who would like to ask you something, Michelle. Go ahead,
Hi.
Leslie.
Thanks for your presentation. It's very interesting.
Thank
I have a couple of questions, but I think the one I want to ask first is if you could just give us a quick update or status on the federal. I understand the federal government was putting in a single-use plastics ban, but I do remember that there were some issues around it, and I'm just wondering if you could update us on where that stands, because and how it relates to your own advocacy with municipalities.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really great question. So right now, the decision on whether or not it's legal to uphold the ban is still under consideration. The decision is expected fairly soon. But in the absence of that decision, it's assumed that the regulations are still in place and that people should be eliminating the single-use plastics that were on that banned list. But how it relates to our advocacy, I guess in the case, if the regulations get struck down, it becomes a bit of a tougher pathway than currently exists, and having to convince people to kind of eliminate those items from their daily life anyway. But of course, our advocacy goes beyond those items that are listed in the federal ban, and we're really looking towards how we can help businesses, how we can help municipalities kind of avoid maybe some of the problematic alternatives that might get used in replacement of single-use plastics, and how we can encourage people to maybe adopt more sustainable systems like reuse. But in terms of the federal regulations right now, they're still pending. We're hoping for a positive outcome, but the decision should likely come before the end of this year, so we'll have a bit more clarity there.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Michelle. I have a question for yourself, and I am really hoping that your endeavors have at least looked into this a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Our municipality is not heavy urban, but we have a very large agricultural sector.
Yeah.
And I know that you would be aware that farming practices for livestock involve what's called bale wrap. And there's either a plastic netting that gets used, and then there's also a white solid sheet of plastic which is used to wrap bales. And it's a real problem for the agricultural producers, and there is no end place for them to put this. So have you seen this, or have you looked into it? Because if our group can come up with something to help our agricultural people have something for it, because at this point, you take it to the waste disposal people. At one time locally here, all they did was they either put it in a big giant heap themselves, but there was no market for recycling. So, Michelle, have you ever looked into what I just called bale wrap?
Yeah, that's a really good Good point. It's not necessarily my forte. I know a little bit about it, but something that's really interesting is we actually have a board member at Mind Your Plastic who works for Clean Farms. I don't know if you've ever been in touch with them, but they deal specifically with agricultural waste. So everything from, pesticide containers or totes and drums to things like bale wrap or the silage plastic or bunker covers even. I think right now their collection programs or recycling programs in Ontario only cover the containers, totes, and drums. I think they're running pilots to collect things like bale wraps. If I'm not mistaken, the current pilot is taking place in Bruce County. But I would also be happy to connect you with our board member and see if there's any sort of way that Meaford could potentially become a pilot project area if there's lots of people who are passionate about taking care of that bale wrap plastic.
Well, thank you for that, Michelle. And we certainly would appreciate if you would forward through the clerk's office any other contact that we can come up with. It was one of the subjects that we talked about at our very early meeting as a sustainability group. And everything's connected to everything. And I never took the opportunity today to really introduce myself to you. I'm the chair and my name is Tony Bell, and I really do appreciate your time that you've spent with us here this afternoon. And it is it's a real concern to everyone. And I really want to thank you for speaking to us today. And I invite you to maybe stay tuned to us and watch as we have our discussion later on in our agenda, what our thoughts are on this very subject matter. So I want to thank you finally and wish you a very good afternoon.
Thank you so much. On behalf of myself and Emily, we really appreciate the opportunity to present to you today.
Okay, thank you. In our agenda, we are 4B. There are no deputations today. So we'll move to item number 5, which is the approval of minutes of the August 7th, 2024 meeting of this advisory committee. Could I have a mover and a second as they are approved and be presented? Moved by Councillor Porter and by Member Lewis. All in favor of receiving the minutes? Thank you. Items for consideration is listed as none. So item 7, immediately following our very nice presentation, is climate change mitigation resiliency single-use plastics for discussion. I hope that with what Michelle had put up for us to look at on the big screen and what we have read in our counselor's package, that this will open up a very good discussion here this afternoon. So I will open it up to the members who wish to make some comment on the presentation, and we'll have a good conversation. I know we will. Councillor Member Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, lots of information packed into that presentation, and how I think a lot of that ties into the project charter that's on the agenda here, the climate change mitigation and resiliency. It might be considered out of scope, but a important stat with regards to the presentation was the how much CO2 is created from plastic production and plastic burning. Not to say we don't produce plastic in the municipality that I know of on a large scale, and I don't think we burn the plastic, but of course, if we are consumers of single-use plastics, we are contributors and we are participators in that impact. So one thing that I have been working on and considering is working with Mind Your Plastics on the possibility of some form of single-use plastics ban or restriction within the municipality. And what that looks like, don't fully know just yet, but Mind Your Plastic, of course, has worked with other municipalities and have had a fair amount of success implementing this. I also note that when there are functions or events that are the ones that I have attended that are led by the county, I don't see single-use plastics there. So it's nice to see that there is some level of implementation at the county level, which is great. So my hope is that at some point in time, we would be able to implement some sort of policy that would reduce or eliminate single-use plastics in favor of better alternatives. And of course, I've been talking with Bart and Alex about that as well. And so we're sort of seeing what that might look like in the future if I do bring something like that to council. But wanted to have this presentation here from Mind Your Plastic. And of course, with this committee being focused on sustainability, I felt that there was a lot of synergy, and we could use this as a great opportunity to have members of the committee share their thoughts and opinions with regards to how this could look like if the municipality did adopt some form of single-use plastic ban or restriction or whatever that would look like. So I certainly welcome comments from the rest of the table. I know we have a few empty seats, so I was hoping for a little bit more of a fulsome discussion, but we've got some really good thinkers here, so I'm looking forward to that. So I'll kind of just jump back and forth, but I'll leave it at that, and I'll turn the table over to the rest of the committee. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you, Member Porter. From this side, Member Black.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Waste management is an area that I'm very familiar with. As I've mentioned before, my father was instrumental in bringing the blue box to Ontario. And I worked for Fisher Leff and Associates in Ottawa and Halifax with a waste management company, where we would advise businesses and governments as well to reduce their waste. They had a very interesting formula. As a company, they made their profits off of what the company or the institution saved. So there was no upfront cost. They actually made their money off their savings. So they had waste audits done, and they provided advice. The institution or business implemented the advice, and the savings were tracked, and that was their profit. That's how they made their money. So there's a lot of money to be made in waste management, and of course, plastics is just a part of that. Of course, it lasts a long time. I think, it's been a long time since my dad and his people implemented the Blue Box program, and since I was working for Fisher and Leff, and there's been relatively little progress. And it takes courage. It takes courage from municipalities and governments at any level to make sure the changes happen. Because what's happening in this part of the world is that corporations are leading and controlling, and the governments are not governing because the corporations they're having too much control. So this Ajax corporate ban, I'd like to know more about that, but I mean, it requires guts by the governments to say, listen, this is what it's going to be, and put the foot down and make sure it happens. It has to be implemented in a way, the research has to be done. We need to look at the best case scenarios in Ontario and other places to make sure that we can say it's been done here, 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 and here. This is what we're doing. It's for all of our good. And of course, certain businesses will kick back and push back. It's to be expected, but government needs to get the guts to do it. And that comes from banding together with other governments and making it look like not only is it beneficial to everyone, but it's also the way that everybody else is going to normalize it. We can't look like we're doing something unique, and because it's not. But you know, that's the heart of it here. We need to action has to happen in the classrooms. I was a teacher. I can speak from that side as well. And the schools are not being responsible enough either. And so when we talk, there's too much. There needs to be action. And so when we talk about, oh, are there any teachers that might be interested? Well, you know, I'm sure there are, but it needs to be more like going to the school boards and telling the school boards, this is what we're trying to do. We want your teachers. We want you to feed this down to your teachers and make it a requirement at the staff meetings even to make sure that the teachers are modeling proper behavior, because it's not happening. So we got to run a tight ship as a municipality. There's no room for dilly-dallying around. Like the world sees the state of affairs, and with regards to climate change, plastics, everything. Action. It's got to be action. Like, not much has changed since my dad did this Blue Box program, since I was at Fisher Levin Associates. And in fact, the corporations, I would say, are manipulating the governments. And just like Michelle was talking about with the federal waste ban, the federal government has great intentions, excellent intentions. What's happened? The corporation are manipulating them, pushing back, taking control of it all. Why? It's not for the good of anybody else but themselves. It's their self-interest. And you compare that to European countries where they tend to, the European Union countries, they tend to have more control of the corporations, whereas in North America, not so much. I don't know, I don't have the answers of how we can shift it, but it has to shift because not enough is happening. And to speak at a more personal level, my wife and my own family, Michelle had one slide there with 3 different things that we can do. I mean, we use a lot of reusable containers, glass containers, and you know what? It's awesome. And I went to Denmark. I've seen it in Denmark. You go to Denmark, they've got all these dispensaries, and it's not worse. It's better. It's better. You've got glass containers that are high quality. They're not leaching into the product. So if you ingest it, there's a possibility of microplastics in your body, or whether it's a baby or whether it's an adult or whatever. So how do we get the grocery store in Meaford to do more of a dispensary type of model where they do have this in British Columbia. I know of some examples, and I know it's more common in Europe. How do we get the grocery store in Meaford to do more of that model? Maybe we can get one of the stores that's on Sound, the Bulk Barn. Maybe we can somehow talk to that company, say that we've got a major initiative that we're trying to do here in this municipality, get them into this community, because the amount of waste that they save, the Bulk Barn, is immense. Like we don't have much recycling in our family because we reuse, we rethink, we're thinking about it differently. So I think I've talked long enough.
No, it's it's
it's
exactly what we
topic.
wanted, Member Black. When Brandon brought forward this idea of this, we said that this was going to be a very key element. And you have said 4 things that I think, and I know Brandon is big on this, is that we've got a subject matter which is very important. This committee, we want to have something which is tangible and real and doable. And you've touched on modifying behavior, So we talked about the culture. The culture that we have today just need to have an educational change on our habits that we have allowed, and it has come from big corporations. I was thinking about this meeting, and for some reason, I started thinking about history and armies. Armies needed water. They carried water in reusable containers. Where did we go that it was so convenient to buy bottled water and throw it away?
Yeah.
When I was growing up and on the farm, when we went to the field, we didn't have these plastic containers. We had thermoses and they were cold, and our culture has changed and we have allowed it to just be so. And these concerning comments that Michelle brought forward, I read the one where I think she mentioned it twice in her presentation, that plastics have now been found in a human heart. So when you, Member Black, were saying about not much has changed and what we're going to do, I know that Member Forder and myself, we really want to have something come from this committee to bring before council to do something. If it's small steps in the right direction, we're going to do those small steps. So one thing we had at our preliminary meeting when we were talking about what our agenda meeting should be, we talked about refillery stations, a spot for people to go. Well, when I heard that, I thought that's great. Then someone mentioned we have one at the Meaford Hall. Yes. And I didn't know that. I don't know how many times I've been to the, and I actually went to the person who, sells tickets. I said, where's this refillery thing? They said, well, you walk right past it. And then I went to the front door and there's a sticker on the door. There's a refillery station in here. And then the person that was at the Meaford Hall said, and we would like to have one upstairs. So when they're doing performances, there's a refillery station upstairs. So we have started, but in my aspect, I didn't know about it because we're not promoting it. So we also need to do a degree of promotion of what we can do and how to make this change. And I hope Councillor, I refer to him as Councillor Forder, we could talk a little bit about how it is that as a municipality, you said, Member Black, we can make some changes that we can show others so that others can take a look and say, this municipality is doing something and they would also like to join in on that. And I would love very much for us to be a lead on that. Member Lewis, welcome.
Thanks, Rob, for that impassioned commentary. I can't agree more heartedly. A couple of pointers that I have, and thank you, Brandon, for bringing forward that idea of policy. I think it would be a really good thing to do. There are a couple of issues. I think that, you need the carrot and you need the stick. You need the honey, you need the vinegar, in a way. And I think both work, especially if you can try to coordinate them so that they are working with each other rather than against each other. We do have a bulk bin it's called a bulk bin in Meaford. We go, it's fantastic. The more we go, the more we see there is to offer, the more we buy from her. So, we have one. It'd be great to be advertising that a bit more, although I know you've got to be careful around what businesses you highlight, but I think having some kind of educational information rather than educational, because I think that's also what we realize is that the public, including all of us, you know, we don't necessarily have to be educated. We need to be shown where we can get things. So I think some of the information, if we could have flyers and things that would go out that would say, hey, you know, if you're thinking about reducing your plastic, here's some ways that you can do it in Meaford. So I think that's a good thing. I think having a policy is a great starting point because it provides the framework. Essentially, develop a policy and you say, well, you know, this we need informational campaigns. But I also think for me, a stick is really the cost of garbage. It's so cheap. I know that there's been a lot of outcry on when the cost of a garbage bag went up, but really it's way too cheap. I don't know if there is a different sort of pricing. I would assume that there would be a different pricing for, say, our local McDonald's or Tim Hortons versus households. But I think again, you need to have incentives, and one of the incentives is saving money, because it's just too easy to go and buy that big bag of plastic stuff and then throw it away and you pay $4 or, you know, it's crazy. And when you think about how, you know, the cost of our landfills, how much space it takes, how much work it actually takes to fill it in, what environmental damage there is, we think about how long the plastics are, you know, this isn't the legacy that we're leaving our grandchildren. It's our great grandchildren will have that legacy as well, you know, our garbage that we're throwing away. But I think again, you can't have that stick without there being some sort of carrot. So I think I just wanted to say that, and then all right, I think I've covered it. Yeah, school is a great idea, but and I have heard, I don't have any young children around, but I've heard a lot of parents say that they've learned about things or they've changed their habits through what their children are saying when they come home. A lot of the reduction in the of plastic use and recycling and so on comes from the incentive of children. But it would take courage for Meaford, for example, to raise the cost of garbage. I know there would be a huge outcry. And so it's not only courage though, because I think it's also communication and some sort of explanation of why it's happening and some sort of warnings and ways, like really practical ways that people could consider to reduce their waste, so that it's just not, oh, I'm going to carry on my lifestyle and now I have to pay $10 for a garbage bag. I also think, I think you said this, Rob, I think it's a really good idea to work at the county level.
Yes.
So that, you know, especially for the McDonald's and the Tim Hortons and so on.
The more hands you're holding as you're moving forward, the better.
It's the same thing, and Grey County, luckily, I think we're blessed with them because I think they are willing to show the lead and they've developed a climate action plan. I know municipalities, including Meaford, have actually waited to see what that plan is before they'll go and do their own. They're working on green development standards that would be adopted across, you know, multiple, not only municipalities in Grey County, but they're actually working with other counties so that it's really a much wider spread adoption. So yeah, I think I've spoken a lot, but those are some of the key points.
Thank you for that. I'm going to plant the seed here with Member Forder, because what we want to do is, as the chair, after today's discussion, I'd like you then, when we're got the month in between when we have another meeting, I want you to really consider then something very tangible, and I'm going to plant the seed now for us. I'm going to use this, having a plastic-free event. What do you think about that? Member Forder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you. So having like a plastic-free event, so it would be like a single plastic-free event?
Yeah.
What kind of event would that look like?
Well, we have events right now where we have water that when people, the municipality goes out, but we need to have something that we're not going to end up with a bunch of plastic bottles then in our big blue recycling, even though we provide blue recycling bins, we want to divert that, at least to have something that would be cardboard or something that would be more reusable, that is more marketable. So if we have an event that we can advertise it as saying, we'd like this to be a plastic-free event, basically telling people, the folks that want to attend, you're bringing water, can you bring a thermos? Could you do something different for a change for yourself to give it a try?
Love it. I think it's great. If we can make it fun, we can make it cool. That's a really good start. And to touch on a couple of the comments from the other members, disposable items are convenient. They're cheap and convenient. So it's no wonder why they're so popular. But of course, many people are resistant to change if it means altering their day-to-day routine that they're comfortable with. So the convenience of having something that is single use, you use it, you toss it, and then you forget about it. There's no more fuss. So I think what's really important is habits need to be changed and encouraged through education and awareness so people really understand the impact of their actions. And while something might be convenient, there is a ripple effect and the negative impact that that's going to have. I do see a change in generations. So just anecdotally, if I'm at the grocery store and my 12-year-old daughter is very environmentally conscious, we'll be looking at the produce and she'll say, Dad, how come there is a piece of fruit that is wrapped in plastic on a foam tray, wrapped in plastic again? She says, don't people realize that this is like really bad for the environment? And the fruit has the natural ability to protect itself because it has a skin or a rind. Or, don't buy these 3 peppers that are all pre-wrapped. You can buy the loose ones. And so you save yourself the plastic. So it does give me hope, knowing that the light's turning on for younger generations because they are more aware of the impact that this has. So at this point, I think any effort or any step in that direction is a good positive step. But everything has to have a starting point. But what we're talking about is far from a new concept. Like this is not us being tremendously innovative.
That's right.
Even Owen Sound had discussed single-use plastic bans like 5 years ago. So in many cases, compared to other municipalities, we're far behind when it comes to how we treat single-use plastics and educating people with regards to the impacts. And that's a really cool thing about Mind Your Plastic is their community outreach services. And so I was just, bear with me as I get my note here. So for instance, Mind Your Plastic is, they can work with municipalities for public education and voluntary compliance. So they can do public education campaigns with the municipality to help raise awareness about zero waste initiatives. They can work with municipalities with regards to hosting workshops and training sessions for businesses and community organizations. And then also encouraging voluntary compliance with zero waste practices among like permit holders and event organizers and things like that. So the nice thing is, as a municipality, if this is something that we ever wanted to adopt, we don't have to do it all ourselves. There are resources out there, and organizations like Mind Your Plastic are able and willing and eager to connect and help make a difference. And they're doing this all over Canada, which is great. So I think if that is a resource that we have, it would be in our best interest to use that and to work with them. Because as Rob's comment is, a lot of people have to hold hands in order to make these things happen. So I think that's just another link in the long chain when it comes to making meaningful change that is sustainable minded through that lens. So as a committee, that's something that we can think about going forward. Not something that we need to do today, but for future meetings, the committee does have the capacity to make recommendations to council. So that is something that, the committee can think about if we ever wanted to make a recommendation to council to consider something like a plastic ban, or make a recommendation to do something about say like a plastic free event. I don't necessarily know if we would need council's approval for that. We could, community organizers could do that, with support of municipal leaders. So I'm not sure what that would look like, but just something for a committee that's here, and then hopefully the ones that are not here will be watching this when it's not live on YouTube. But that is something that us as a committee, from an actionable perspective, we do have the capacity to make a recommendation to council if we see something that we want to get behind. So I'll just leave it like that for now for us to think about. But I think this is an opportunity for this committee to actually be a doing committee rather than just a talking committee.
Yep.
So that was my goal with regards to bringing this to the committee for discussion, was that since there was a lot of synergy here, I thought we would be able to come out of it a lot stronger with a better understanding of what our options might be.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you for that, Member Forder. We're joined this afternoon also by a member of senior staff. And would that member, Mr. Toby, have anything to contribute to our discussion this afternoon from a seat that is management of the municipality?
Well, thank you, your chair. My position is acting director of development services. Normally my position is the chief building official, so it's something a little different for me. I've been doing this off and on since August. What I would like to say is I really enjoy the conversation, and that I think it's really great that you guys are looking at different avenues. I do think there are possibilities, and I think I have to kind of figure them out a little bit more before I discuss and share them with you. But I think there are avenues where, that there, you can get strength in numbers in getting more municipalities to join you in your fight to kind of get more of a foothold in this. And there's, over the years, I've seen municipalities put proposals together and they share it with all the other municipalities, for things like, different common issues that are common to all sorts of municipalities, be it funding or say a recognition of a certain issue that needs to be addressed, and then having it go to Queen's Park to be brought on. So I don't have a lot to ask or to answer to you guys today on just kind of the small stuff, but I think down the road there's, maybe that's something we could look at maybe doing to kind of get it's hard for one municipality to kind of change the governance of large corporations because they'll just avoid us. But if you get a lot of municipalities, singing the same hymn, then it's a lot easier to get a lot of buy-in. So I just kind of want to leave that with you, that you don't want to be the island in the middle of the ocean, but at the same time, if you're a whole bunch of islands, then you might be really popular.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Member Black.
Yes, I agree with everything you said. And as Brandon said, it's been going on for a while. There's a lot of room for improvement. Everybody should know by now that recycle is down on the list. It's the other R's that are more important, but unfortunately it seems that recycle has become the most common and the other R's have been kind of abandoned. But as a municipality, of course, I think in this room, we all seem to agree that it sounds like a great plan to embrace Mind Your Plastics. And then we have to realize there's a lot of data to support what we want to achieve. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of other examples. So you draw from the data, you draw from the examples, you draw from Mind Your Plastic, you draw from this committee. And then most importantly, we have to come up with a strategy that is going to succeed. We can't just be ad hoc. We have to say, okay, we want to do this, 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 and this, but we've got to accomplish this first and, set the foundation, whatever that may be. We have to look at the examples and what has been successful and what's not been successful. But Another thing, two more items that I just wanted to bring up that have not been mentioned is we have to also realize that when we get anything, it is what, say it's a plastic water bottle, that resource had to be extracted from somewhere. It had to be taken out of the earth. It had to be refined and made into a bottle. That it's damaging to the earth. Once you've taken from the earth, we want to keep using it. We don't want to just throw it into a pit, a landfill site somewhere. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is it not true that our waste is going to Michigan, or are they not? It's going to Miller Waste in Owen Sound, and then they take it all the way, isn't it, to Michigan or something? Where's the landfill? Where does it actually end up? Isn't it in Michigan?
I know that Toronto ones.
I believe it is for this area as well.
Yeah.
So our impact, when we reduce waste in this area, it is significant, because just imagine all the truckloads heading all that way.
Yep.
You know, it's very, very important, because NIMBY is a real thing, NIMBYism, right? Nobody wants a landfill site in their backyard. And I guess in this area, nobody wanted it in their backyard, so it had to go to Michigan. Like, and if nobody wants it in their backyard, then they better be responsible and use their waste and use their be very responsible.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I know that we're on target. We've hit a very solid chord with a single subject matter, plastic, and its impacts. And I think for this sustainability committee, I just opened this up again about the municipality of Meaford. In our strategic priorities, one of the lines says that we can review and update, I'll skip a few words, anything that adds pollutants. And it said, like as an example, dust and light and so on. Well, if that's what we as a council said as a strategic priority about having something that we can make an impact and we can make some changes, I think this afternoon, what we will do, what I would like you to do as the chair, is this subject matter will be brought forward again on the next agenda. We can have that to pick up on it. We're not going to have a subject matter and then have it drop, just so we can talk about something different. Because if we get to this point where we can bring forward a recommendation from this committee that we can bring before council for their consideration, that they can then, if they're in favor, ask members of senior staff and their departments to look into doing something on what that can look like. That's what we should be about. And I think we are. So I want to thank everybody. Unless there's any other final comments on this, take this away to yourselves. We have meetings before our agenda meetings. One of the things that I will be doing as the chair, the last meeting we had member Forder join us, integral part of today's agenda. And as the chair, I'm going to be inviting all the members of this committee to join in a pre-meeting, just to have everyone's minds all thinking about how we're pulling this all together. And so it's going to be previous business, plastic, what we can do. And we're not there on our agenda yet, but we do have to set another date in the future. So if we can do something, I think this is probably the fourth time I've mentioned this. If we could do something, maybe by the end of this year, December or January, and bring something before council. I would actually like, from a council's aspect, if we had a recommendation, because we're going to be entering into budget. And so if there's something that we're thinking about that we need to put in some money into a budget, now's the time to do it. So that's what we did. Member Lewis, you have something there, please?
So, yes, I think that's a great idea. I don't know how long it would take. It sounds like it's a bit of a roll up your sleeves and just write out a recommendation or a proposal for council to consider.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure it would take a lot of time. I would encourage us to go bolder and say, let's have a policy for, some kind of restrictions on, I would say, the use of plastic rather than the use of a ban on single use. So if we could try to somehow almost go have a higher level and then say this can include, or as first steps we might do. I don't know how much detail we would need to get into, because I would imagine that would be the policy itself. So for example, I think also your idea of an event, it's a great idea, but I would rather suggest that might be something that would be a way of advertising the policy rather than like, let's go ahead with the policy. And then we need to think, even as the policy is being developed, ways to start to give the community a heads up, this is what we're doing. There could be information days and also an opportunity to invite feedback from members of the public, from businesses and so on what they might want to see in such a policy.
Well, that's what happens, quite technically,
Yeah.
Member Lewis. We're talking about advertising, we're talking about promotion, we're talking about cultural change of thinking, our behavioral patterns. And one of the things that is a responsibility of the chair when council meets to give a report on this very meeting. And the seed will be planted with what this committee is considering, and to put that word out at an open meeting so that they're not surprised when something does come forward. They're going to say, these folks have been working on this previously, and these folks are now bringing something forward, and we're a group that wants to do something for sure. And when you mentioned, Member Lewis, about when it goes to staff to do the report, it is important that when we conclude what we would specifically like to say in the notice of motion, and that's what it is to council, that we have a notice of motion, and what does it specifically say? Because then if council approves that and wants to move forward on it, then it goes to staff, and staff need to know exactly what it's about and what the end result would look like, because they're going to spend some time to do this. And if we don't have it accurate enough for them, it could move. So that's the way the process is. And we don't need to do something in a hurry either. Because if you do something too quickly, we definitely will miss something. You also mentioned the public themselves. 100%. We need to have a meeting where we're promoting this, and we need to have a meeting to say, folks, right here, this is what we're considering, and we're serious about it, and we need feedback. So we have hit the target today with one simple target, plastic, and we're on the mark. Member Black.
It's probably a little premature, but it would be very interesting to know what the waste costs are for the municipality and how that is structured. Because I think that there's some cost savings to be had if this municipality manages its waste more responsibly.
Yep. Member Lewis.
So it would be interesting to hear from Mind Your Plastic if they could give us some kind of idea of what savings other municipalities may already have had, like Ajax, for example. The other thing about Mind Your Plastics, I don't know if they have sample or examples of policies so that we're not having to create something I always like to try to avoid reinventing the wheel if the wheel is already out there somewhere. I think that would be helpful. And then I had one other question I wanted to ask them, which might be, let me just find it here. I missed it. Yeah, I've heard a lot of what for me would only be rumors right now because I haven't been able to discover if it's true. And that is that a lot of our plastics, just generally, not in our municipality, that we are recycling, never get recycled. They just get thrown away at some other point, even if it's like dumped in some sort of Asian country somewhere that has to then deal with it, like Thailand or so on. I mean, they are drowning in our plastic, which is being shipped off to them, and it doesn't get recycled. And now China has actually said, we don't want your plastic. We're not recycling it anymore. And so, again, we're somewhere sending it. I don't know if Meaford has to pay for recycling of plastic, but it's free for us, individuals. You put it in the blue bin, but somewhere down the way, somebody's paying for it if it's not being recycled.
Member Black?
I don't know the intricacies of this municipality, but it's my understanding that each municipality has different arrangements to take their waste or recyclables. Some of them cost money and some of them make money. I would think it's fair to say, though, as far as the plastics journey, humanity's come to a point where we're saying enough is enough. It's time to look at the 3 other R's. And anything that we can do to reduce those plastics so we don't have to throw them into the recycling is the way to go. And for sure, it's a tough job for any municipality to try to find local buyers for those materials. That is a key. That is a key element. And as you said, Leslie, yes, it's my understanding that the bulk of it in Canada is sent to Asia, to different countries in Asia, and some of them are pushing back because they're literally on. So it's not only our local impact here or the consequences in the landfill in Michigan, but it's also once these get put onto massive ship, they're taken across the world, like when we just cavalierly throw them into the trash or whatever, into the recycling, they're going all across the world to go in an enormous hundreds of acres, thousands of acres. It would be probably an inconceivably large pile. People there pick through it. Some of it's on fire. Those emissions go to the air. It's a terrible cycle. So that's why the recycling is at the bottom of the list. It's less than ideal. We've got to do the other things first. And I really do long-term think that we have to get kids and teachers to have a bond with the planet and a true understanding of the complexities, because it seems to me people today are too much consumers and not enough of citizens. There's too much of that going on. And they need to realize the consequences of their actions. And when a teacher can truly understand that, they can instill that in their students. And then it goes back to the parents, and then it goes back to the grandparents. And then we have the magic moment, when things are going to start really moving along without resistance.
Thank you for that. I think that what I will do as the chair is in the interim in between, I don't think that you would be opposed, Member Forder, of making a further contact with Michelle, with the agency or the group that she mentioned this afternoon about something else. Would you be open to do a little look into that to see if we can get a little bit more resource on that aspect?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that.
That would be great. And when we meet again then with Legislative Services, our next meeting, we'll pull something together And if I can maybe push it a little bit, maybe we can come up with some terminology that we can discuss at next meeting, that we can actually do something. So I know that each and every one of us here, and I know the members that are not with us this afternoon, they'll be 100% behind this conversation today. So I think I'll leave that item 7A as a completed topic unless there's anything that's pertinent from anyone else. I think that we've had this, and if Michelle is still watching, I hope that if she is, she's watched a group of people who have this front and center. And in Michelle's presentation and what I read, you know, she said it was a lineal, basically a production line. And what she was promoting was that circular one. There was something different to do. So it's a lot of work, but I mean, if we can consider it, and there's 4, 5, or 6 of us here, if we can, others can too. So I want us to be encouraged that we won't be alone, but we'll get that. We'll move into item 8, which says any committee inquiries from anyone, anything. Member Black.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I'm just wondering what the status is with regards to the Georgian Bluffs folks. They had offered to make a presentation. So because they have gone through, they've had a committee there, an environmental committee for quite some time. I spoke with Brandon about it and Leslie as well. I don't think I spoke with you yet, Tony, about it, but
Was discussed.
so what is the status of that?
Okay, we can inquire about that. Get you an answer on that.
Yeah, because they're quite willing and able to share with us here their experience, and I'm sure there's some things to learn there.
And on that, we would also assume that this committee might be asked to go up here somewhere and say something. We hope that would be that
It keeps on going.
group effort.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Well, that would be part of the holding hands again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody moving forward together
Yep.
with good common purpose.
Thank you for that. Member Lewis.
Similarly, I think I saw in the minutes that, you know, we were talking about Grey County developing these green building standards. And I think we were going to bring somebody from that group to Rebecca Dannard or perhaps one of her staff to come and speak to us about progress on that. I sit on another committee, and just in our most recent meeting, she did do a presentation. I was not able to make that meeting, but I have the minutes. And so, you know, I could always give you a bit of an update. But I think it'd be good to hear from the horse's mouth directly.
Okay. We'll have a conversation with that then for our pre-meeting, what we can pull together. Thank you.
Because ideally, I'd like to see that being something we bring forward from this committee, or we consider at least bringing forward the working with or joining the Grey County group on developing green building standards.
Yeah. Do you have something, Mr. Toby?
So just a little history on the building code. It's what I consider a living document. It's a document that has been revised thousands of times in the 30 years I've worked with it. And environmental standards or conservation has become a huge part of the recent edition of the code. We're coming out with a brand new edition of the Ontario Building Code in January with over 2,500 different changes to the code. The following year, there'll be another 2,000 changes to the code. Some of them will definitely be energy efficiency and making buildings more energy efficient. You know, single-use plastics aren't in the building code. That's not part of it. That's a part of the bailiwick. But that said, there's a lot of things in the code that have changed significantly, and the way materials are used and the types of materials being used are significantly different than they were when I started. So, you know, we use a lot more lumber that's laminated or glued together now than we ever have. We use a lot more insulation that is, you know, foam plastics are really popular nowadays in construction. I'm not sure that's very green, but it's very efficient. So, you know, it's not great for our waste. You know, I don't know enough about that product, but I presume our landfills don't really like it, but at the same time, it reduces the amount of energy used to keep the house warm significantly. And, you know, the code doesn't speak about the amount of waste packaging that comes with materials. That's not part of the code. I don't know if it ever will. There's been programs over the years where, you know, buildings got to certain levels of kind of standards where they built buildings super green, being the materials came locally, the materials were sourced in an environmentally friendly fashion, and the buildings were designed with that in mind and designed so that they were not adding to our landfills or reducing the amount that was added to our landfills, and you know, really compressed the amount of waste that can happen on a construction site. And that's, you know, those are really specialty niches within the industry. That's not the average house. Yeah, thank you for that. Member Lewis?
Thank you for that. It's good to know. It's good to know that there are lots more changes coming through. My understanding is that in a way, the Ontario Building Code sets a minimum requirement. And there are a lot of other standards that can be set by a municipality. A municipality has a lot more scope to set higher standards. It can't set lower standards because the Ontario Building Code sets a minimum. But of course, if Meaford were to come out with very high standards alone, again, what we were talking about, strength in numbers, you know, we'd be the losers in the long run, I think. So this is where Grey County is working to try to develop heft in our area. So it's working with Wellington County. Is it Durham? Is that one of the counties? I think it's something like Durham. I think it's Durham County, and then Grey County are the three working together. But also municipalities in Simcoe are interested in working with, like joining in. So, for example, Collingwood, like they're trying to look at the Southern Georgian Bay group. They're really starting with Wasaga, Collingwood, Thornbury, etc. So that we could collectively in our region come out and say, this is the highest standard that we are now requiring for development. And so Grey County is taking the lead as working in conjunction with these other counties, and then, you know, they will work down with the municipalities. So it's coming. And so I just think it would be a good idea to have them come and talk to us so that we have a sense of where things stand now. And a bit like Tony, what you were saying, we're planting the seed because it is coming, and it's not something I think we should be working on. Like, I love the idea that we're working on the plastics first, but this might be down the way after the plastics and maybe after a few other things. So getting Rebecca Dannard or someone like that to come and speak to us early so that we have a better understanding of, you know, what their goals are, what progress they've made thus far, what their timeline might be, etc. I think would be helpful.
For our next item, which is under communications. Oh. If I may, Chair,
just a quick response to
Okay.
that. So the Ontario Building Code is a document for the entire province. And it's actually written in the code, it's pretty clear in the code that municipalities don't have the authority to actually make it more restrictive or less restrictive than what the code is of the day. So if you're going to enact change, it has to be done at Queen's Park level, and it has to be brought upwards from the municipality to Queen's Park to be brought into the code. The municipality, just to be clear, the municipality or the county doesn't have the authority to actually circumvent the Ontario Building Code. And the Ontario Building Code is really kind of just a variation of the National Building Code, which is kind of, so the National Building Code is kind of like the big umbrella, and many of the provinces and territories take the National Building Code as their code. In Ontario, because of who we are and what we've done over the last 40 years, we've taken the Ontario Building Code and modeled it after the National Building Code, but then we've also really made it our own. So there's things in the Ontario Building Code like barrier-free accessibility and energy efficiency that's far more involved and much more detailed than what's in the National Building Code. And then so just to give you kind of context, the National Building Code say 1.5 inches thick. The Ontario Building Code is about 4 inches thick, when you 5 inches thick when you apply them all together on paper. So you're right, there are things that counties can do. So that they have their own projects, they can say, we want our own buildings to be built to this standard. And the municipality can say, well, we want to build our own buildings. We want them to be this energy efficient. We want them to be built to this level of environmental consciousness. And those are things we absolutely can do. And you're absolutely right that the Ontario Building Code is a minimum standard. But that minimum standard is actually really, really high in relationship to many other jurisdictions in Ontario, or sorry, many other jurisdictions in North America, and is probably one of the best codes, I think, just from my knowledge of it, in North America. So it's changed significantly over the years. So it's gone from, like in a wall, you might have started off with R13 back in the 1770s to now well over 20. You know, we have in our roof systems R60 often is a part of a package. We look at the building a lot more fulfilled. We look at window design much more carefully. We as practitioners of the building code, we receive a ton of pushback on the stuff that we push through already out of the building code. And it's just a really fine line. So I don't want to take away from what you're trying to say, but at the same time, it's something that the county can do, the municipality can do our own projects, but forcing it on individuals, housing is already a really expensive proposition, and we have to kind of balance that. I'm sorry for that.
But I think that's one of the reasons why it would be really helpful to have the Grey County come and tell us about what it is that they're doing, because clearly they are working on something, and we need to know, because I don't think that they would just be wasting their time. And I'm not suggesting that you're saying that. It's just that we need them to come so we have a very clear idea of what it is, so that people like you in the staff can also be informed of what it is if you're not aware of it. And then everybody knows this is something that I think will arrive on our table somewhere, our Meaford's table at some point from Grey County. So it'd be great if we could get them to come. And if there's anything I can do in facilitating connection, I don't think I need to. I think everybody's aware of who they are, but I'm happy to help.
Thank you. Member Black?
I'm wondering, as committee, the 4 committee members, or I don't know if you're considered members, if it's just the 4 of us, but all of us, okay. Will there be an opportunity for us to say like these in our educated opinion, our background opinion, in our research, these are what we think should be the priorities for the municipality. Will there be an opportunity for that? Or will it be we arrive at a meeting and then it's set?
I can answer that. I said quickly that we have a pre-agenda meeting. The first meeting that we had, I had a very wide open meeting. And I had notes of 18 subject matters. And the previous meeting's agenda that we approved, our recording, Alex did a fantastic job of writing down in those minutes the subjects that were covered. So as to your question about how we are engaged, my intention, to repeat what I said much earlier today, is to invite each one of you as members to that pre-agenda meeting. And member Forder joined us, and that was the basic nucleus for our guest speaker today. So as we go around and we have all of you all participate on that, to keep us focused and to keep us going in the same direction, your involvement on that pre-meeting is going to be crucial for as we have meetings and as this committee moves forward. So since you asked that question, there may be an invitation coming your way shortly. But
Sounds good?
your involvement is absolutely critical. Every member is.
Yes,
Thanks.
because I can't speak for Leslie, but myself, as I go about my day to day, there are so many issues.
Yeah.
And there are certainly some that are of greater priority than others.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, if that's our committee inquiries, I've noted two specifically, and I know that our recorder has also probably got those same two. Number 9 says communications, and something again I read. The committee will consider correspondence which is received by members of the public during each meeting. Share your comments, thoughts, or concerns with members of the committee. The public can send an email to deputyclerk@meaford.ca. When emails are received to this email address, they will be compiled into a correspondence list, which is then distributed to the committee members prior to the meeting. The cover sheet of this list will be included in each meeting's agenda. The contents of the correspondence list are not included on the public agenda to protect the privacy and personal information of those residents who choose to send in their thoughts and comments. And today we have nothing that is listed under communications. Item 10 says that we need to determine our next meeting. I have wrote down that it likely will be in December, if that is correct, Alex?
Actually, through you, Mr. Chair, this is the last meeting for this committee for 2024. Because every Wednesday up until December is taken up by all the other committees, and this one was first. So this is our last meeting of 2024 for this committee. And it says to be determined because we will be doing the 2025 schedule for the entire year for all of the committees. So staff will be determining that, and then we will circulate that to everybody.
Knowing that our legislative services, I am so energized to want to bring something before council that I think I would like to, can we modify on the fly? That's not probably, I'd like to do something. So knowing that, which I wrote down that we'd be meeting in December, and we're not, I think I'm going to make sure that my members know this, that when we have our next full council meeting, I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to make my fellow councillors absolutely aware that there will be coming very early in 2025, something from this sustainability committee. Because the sooner we get on it, the sooner we can make something happen. And literally, this sitting council is finished for the new election in 2026. And both Member Forder and I are going to make sure that we accomplish something on this term. So Alex, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. I do want to say everyone had really great discussion today. I would encourage you to note down a lot of the things that you spoke about. I know you mentioned you have other things you'd like to bring to the committee, other good ideas.
Yep.
Take note of those things. And the way that we have the committees set up right now, similar to what Councillor Bell was talking about, we have an agenda meeting 1 week before the agenda is released, and the councillor invites one member of the committee to join that meeting. So we've left that up to the chair to arrange, but being a part of that meeting will be very helpful in terms of bringing those ideas that you have. I just want to be clear that it's not like, okay, stop
Yeah.
thinking, stop worrying about this committee until 2025.
No.
It's just what we're dealing with in terms of scheduling and parameters and staff time and things like that. But you're more than welcome to do research on your own time if you're interested, and bringing it back. I mean, the more the better, really.
And Alex, it is protocol. If members of any committee wish to send something in to you, that you would have record of, and then you can bring those forward when we have our pre-meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's protocol.
If there's anything, the communication section that Councillor Bell just read, that's a section that's dedicated for members of the public. And it also includes committee members. If there's some sort of written document you'd like to share,
Yep.
feel free to send it to me.
Yep.
So there are several different ways that we can sort of be involved with the agenda process. And just again, that agenda review meeting we added it into the new establishment of these committees so that committee members would be a part of that process.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. I don't know if I should say thank you to that or not, Alex. We're not going to have another meeting for the end of the year, but thanks for the information on it. It'll be worked on. We'll work through it. Yeah. So then quite literally, item 10 says it's to be determined, that it is going to be determined. And we will let the members know in the future. With that, actually, that brings us to the end of this meeting this afternoon. Thank each one of you for a great conversation this afternoon. And thank you, Bart, for attending today and shedding some light on some other aspects of what goes on in our municipality, particularly from your department. And thank you, Brandon, for bringing our guest speaker to have this great meeting this afternoon. Thank you. And with that, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Now it's official.